Funding for NotAVampyre is provided by viewers like you. Find perks and bonus content at patreon.com/NotAVampyre. Thank you!
I have a weird relationship with the nostalgia critic. I didn't necessarily grow up with him. I remember a childhood friend, crush, boyfriend showing me some video when the website was still that guy with the glasses, but I didn't actually watch his stuff on my own until I started college in the ancient year of 2013. But by then, I was already getting exposed to his flavor of so-called media analysis via YouTubers like the Phantom Reviewer. The best way I could describe the style of viewing media is one that considers the weird and seemingly nonsensical to be inherently bad. Basically the idea behind the big-lipped alligator moment criticism. The scene doesn't have much to do with the film, and in fact stops the movie and seems to be random, therefore it should have been cut. It's the icky fat on my otherwise perfect plate of Christmas ham topped with pineapples. I promise I did not write this in the middle of Christmas, it was like July. I think I hold this philosophy on storytelling to a degree. Especially in relation to musicals, I take the Howard Ashman approach. If you're going to put a song somewhere, it will be saying something spoken dialogue can't convey. The song will either be furthering the plot or letting characters explain their feelings. There is going to be a purpose, a sort of justification to it. This way you don't feel like the musical parts of the musical are taking away from the story or stopping everything so people can break into song, as is often the criticism of musicals. But the more I think of it, I don't think this should be the hard law that every work must follow to be good or even likable. For one, the idea that everything needs to be justified in existing in stories can lead to very annoying extremes, like making it so every song in your musical is diegetic. Not in the way that George Clooney movie did, where though every song is performance, they each had a thematic connection to the story, but like they did in old movie musicals where they would just take place in theaters and the songs would be just numbers disconnected from the stories themselves. Look, I like 1954's A Star is Born a lot, and not just because I'm obsessed with Judy Garland. Like, even I'm not huge into summer stock and I found Harvey Girls to be a confused mess. But I'll admit, the long performance sequences can get tedious and have me squirming, waiting to get back to the drama at hand. What I mean to say is not that having an explanation for everything in your movie makes it better. It's a spectrum. Too little apparent reason, and you'll either have your audience confused or taken out of the experience. And too much explaining comes off as the creators being uncomfortable with the show that they're putting on and need to justify everything to the viewer. You see the latter in most modern musicals with the constant lampshading over the fact that you're watching a musical. How everyone has to comment on how weird the song parts are, or acknowledging that people are singing as if they're apologizing that this musical you're watching is a musical. I think this need to lampshade quirky aspects of movies or justify every creative decision has become an erosive plague on modern media. It's why I don't want to watch Marvel movies anymore. I'm burned out on every important or emotionally impactful moment being met with a joke. Like, the movie is insulting me for taking it seriously for even a minute. Or I'm not allowed to just watch the story unfold and piece together visual hints why Bella's considered an outsider. No, the movie has to explicitly tell me why Bella and her dad moved to the poor provincial town and exactly how she doesn't match their sexist poor rural mindset. And I promise this isn't a specific call out on Disney, but they're also perpetrators of these complaints, especially in the recent Peter Pan and Wendy. Peter Pan and Wendy isn't a bad movie. I don't feel like my love for the Peter Pan story is being insulted, nor do I feel that the film is nothing but a cash grab. At least watching the movie, it doesn't make me feel that. Actually, there's quite a bit I enjoy. It's so refreshing to have a Tinkerbell who isn't intensely jealous of Wendy from first meeting. While we are shown her strong devotion to Peter, there's so much more to her than that. She loves him, and is also frustrated by Peter always speaking for her, listening but never hearing what she has to say. He just comes up with what he thinks she means, then proceeds as if he can only be correct. Wendy actually gets to have a special relationship with Tinkerbell, as she's the only one who keeps trying to understand regardless of how difficult the endeavor is. And she's the one who's eventually able to comprehend Tink because she's willing to keep trying. Even though I feel like he got little to do in the second half of the film, I felt Jim Gaffigan did a good job as Shmi. He had great comedic timing for this version of the character, and never felt grating to watch. He really did feel like the pirate kids would find lovable as he focused on his tea during an execution. It was never not funny how disconnected his line of thinking was from Hook's. Hook's trying to be all dramatic about the no clocks rule, and Smee just interprets that as, Captain wants me to list all the rules of the ship. Look, I promise I found this funny. I just can't seem to put it into words why without explaining what the joke is. Hell, maybe I relate to him as someone whose priorities and interpretations of communications are often totally different from those around me, and a part of me enjoys seeing that version used for comedy instead of ending up as a frustrating train wreck. And I think my fondest memory of this movie will be how much the pirates covet Michael's teddy bear. It doesn't really make sense, and that's part of what makes it so charming. They just really want this bear so much that they'll call dibs on it. It's such fun to see them be so attached to it. And I think if the film had more of this, I would have liked it more. Much of the first half is filled with lighthearted moments of whimsy or excitement. From poor unfortunate Toodles claiming he knew it was a bad day to fly before Peter was attacked by the pirates. Wendy's intense physical reactions to being shot at by the Lost Boys, to Peter stealthily changing the chant from No Children in Neverland to No One But Children in Neverland. But then it stops. John and Michael are rescued, then everything got serious. Not serious in Wendy has what will always be unrequited love for Peter, or that Hook is going to make all the children walk the plank serious. The tone stops being of an adventurous and roller coaster whimsy. It stops being a movie for kids and turns into some adult's deep interpretation of the Peter Pan story, flashing a sign saying how the children can leave the theater now. No longer is the main conflict about good versus evil, children versus adults, Lost Boys versus pirates, Hook versus Pan. Instead, the issue is that Hook and Peter used to be friends. Peter was cruel to Hook, and now Hook is evil, I guess. But like evil in the way where he's not truly evil according to the movie, but more like a source of danger who actually has a sad backstory, so he isn't really at fault for being who he is. It kind of makes Peter out to be the secret true villain for having banished Hook for loving his mother, as we know mothers are very important to the Peter Pan mythos, and for not agreeing with Wendy when she wants him to end this seemingly senseless fighting. Because everything is made muddy, it's not at all fun to watch Hook and Peter fight in the third act. Who am I rooting for? Technically it should be Peter because he's not the one trying to kill all the kids, but also Peter is to blame for everything that happened, so maybe here he deserves to lose. Peter Pan has always been a messy character morally. He's good in the way that a child understands goodness without having fully learned empathy. He always wants to show good form because he has a strong sense of fairness, and yet is selfish as he tries to trick Wendy into staying in Neverland by making it look like her mother closed the bedroom window on her and thus forgotten her. We never know why Peter and Hook started fighting or what led Peter to lop off Hook's hand, but we don't really need to. While it's fun to imagine an alternate universe fanfics, the story works well enough, leaving their history vague as it's already relying on tropes to explain the situation. Pirates are assumed villainous, especially when the story was written. Though works like Pirates of the Caribbean have introduced dubiousness into pirates as an idea in the cultural consciousness, there's still an expectation that a pirate character is likely the bad guy. And kids are kids. When paired with adults, especially assumed evil ones, you just know to root for the children. They're the default good guy. What does giving a defined start to the Peter versus Hook animosity do? What are we gaining by giving specifics? I guess it gives us a different conclusion to the conflict other than Peter defeating Hook in battle, but I don't feel that the story is being heightened. Of course we need Peter to apologize to Hook because Peter's supposed to be our good guy, regardless of how out of character that maturity is for this Peter who loves showing off while saving people. It's kind of the only way the fight could end unless you want to go all in on the Peter is evil actually. And to me, neither of them are exciting. Again, this making of who is right so ambiguous makes their entire sword fight unfun. I don't know who I want to root for because both sides suck. So I can't feel the tension as one side gets the upper hand over the other.
Wake me up if one of them kills the other. Again.
It was great fun for me to watch Robin Williams as grown-up Peter Pan come in conflict with the whimsical childish paradise of Neverland in 1991's Hook because I never felt like the fun was being looked down upon. The youthful games and child's outlook was portrayed as something Peter needed to relearn to literally save his kids, and then figure out how to balance them with the responsibilities of adulthood in order to save his family. Hook's Peter truly did grow up wrong because he threw away the imagination and his ability to value more than just his goals. Wendy is kind of the opposite of this. From the start of the movie, she's practically a grown-up in spirit. For as much as she yearns to remain a child, She's already past the point of no return as she calls John and Michael playing Peter Pan a silly little game. Sure, she tries to defend her joining in as just a bit of fun, but I also don't think she really disagrees with Mr. Darling when he says she's too old for that kind of fun. She spends the movie acting like the mature one of the cast. She sees giving the kiss to Peter as placating rather than a sign of affection. She can't enjoy Peter's flourishes as he fights the pirates in Skull Rock, nor can she find the fun in an adventure where they rescue her brothers and triumph over evil pirates. She's like someone who hates roller coasters, not because she has a sensitive stomach or a fear of falling, but rather she'd hate them because it even slightly stimulates the thrill of danger. She has no capacity to enjoy coming close to harm, but then beating the bad guys in the end. She's too worried about the details of what if Peter lost a hook to appreciate the fun in winning against him. She can't see the good in things that she'd overall not want to experience. It's like she lacks the ability to see silver linings. She can't get lost in the magic of Neverland. Instead of enjoying the company of Peter and the Lost Boys, she tries to dig right into the secret history of Hook, Peter, and why Neverland is the way it is. There's no sense of rolling with the whimsy. To Wendy, it's not allowed to be that. Everything must be thoroughly investigated and explained, not for the thrill of discovery, but because things aren't allowed to be that simple. There must be something deeper, some explainable reason why things happen in Neverland. Hook and Peter's conflict can't be as simple as good versus evil. The Lost Boys live in ruins because we can't explain why they could live in a tree connected to an underground home. We can't think of a sciencey reason why Tinkerbell glows, so she won't have a shine to her except in certain scenes where she needs to act as a light source. Instead of a random chance encounter, Peter found Wendy because she lives in what used to be his home. There's no mystery to life, no unexplainable curiosity. She acts like Peter Banning explaining away Granny Wendy's extraordinary experiences. We're not allowed to get lost in the adventure when it's constantly on pause while the film tries to justify every part of itself. Everything is forced to have one specific reason for being and thus loses the magic. Neverland is no longer some fantastic island where children escape in their playtime games. It's just some place on a map that I could visit without faith, trust, and pixie dust. Look at the scenery! It doesn't feel like a specific place that I can only dream of visiting. It's a place you fly drones over for cool shots in your travel documentary. Trying to make this fantastical children's tale where people literally fly and don't age realistic, it rather goes against the very notion of Neverland. The book describes it as a place where children go to play in their imagination, but only in a distant way, so they never really encounter the dangers of Neverland. Neverland is a place where all the silliness of make-believe can be real. When you try to explain and justify Neverland in such a boring, mundane way, it stops being Neverland. Not in the, well, that's not the Neverland from the book way, but instead in the way where I can't imagine any child having this version on their top 5 list of magical places to visit. Mentally, I keep coming back to this line from Wendy.
Surely it can't be as simple as that. Why not?
Why can't it be? A lot of classic media lets things be simple, and we love it. Not in spite of the simplicity, but because the simplicity allows us to focus on other aspects. We can just leave it at Hook and Peter are enemies and spend more time on how Wendy and Peter feel about each other and the ways they can't be together. The Lost Boys just ended up in Neverland because they fell out of their pram when the nurses weren't looking, so we get to experience the strange, uninformed ideas they have on mothers and families, and also see them as a sort of cautionary tale for the Darling children if they don't return home. The crocodile managed to eat and never pass the clock, so we immediately understand Hook's fear anytime we hear ticking and wonder if the croc will eat him this time. Let's look outside of Peter Pan. The dad trio Mamma Mia choosing to all be Sophie's dad is way more fun than watching them argue parental rights and paternity tests. We can leave it at Audrey too is just magically so captivating that we can explore the cost of Seymour's fame and trust that the plant is a real threat to our world. Humans and Muppets just exist together. So what does the concept of family mean to Jim, Gonzo, and Rizzo when they don't look alike and aren't blood related but care for each other? The mandrake is integral to pregnancy, so it's thematically significant that Ophelia's mother rejects the not real-world explanation for her suddenly improved health like our villain. Hell, we just accept that all of Henry VIII's wives would form a girl pop group and sing about how each had it worse with him. And it's fine. It makes me tired that over-explaining and realism in massive air quotes is the norm in current media. I long for more films that just let us enjoy the story being told. More works like the recent West Side Story, where no one had to come out and justify why the jet-aligned characters dress in blues while those with the sharks dress in reds. More villains like Baroness Ramilla de Ghent, who I can empathize with the hardship she must have faced marrying a man she hardly knew, then being left with no income source and a stepdaughter she doesn't really get along with after his sudden passing. But also root for her demise because she's still done evil regardless of how relatable she is. More worlds where a penguin can pretend to be a chicken and that's just how it is, I guess, because Fred the farmer won't believe me and I have to get the goblins to agree on a new armor color anyway, so I really don't have the time. I want to have fun with the media I consume. I want it to give me emotional and sensory experiences that I can't easily achieve in the physical world I exist in. Mundane logic and messy conflicts aren't novel. Real isn't inherently good, especially in a fantasy story where the draw is the unrealistic. Sometimes the fun is in accepting the big-lipped alligator moment and appreciating it for what it is, rather than treating it like a gotcha in a CinemaSin-style surface level of media analysis. Hello, thank you for consuming this video. This is hopefully going to be the start of what I'm going to call the Peter Pan Project. A project where I go through, talk about, and analyze the many different Peter Pan works, primarily the ones put to film. If I feel like it, I might talk about some of the Peter Pan shows, and maybe a little bit of the books. I'd like to get around to talking about the Peter Pan and Wendy book, but I'm not sure if I will yet. Until those come out, you can check out in the card, probably around here, explaining why I think the 2003 film is my favorite version and probably one of the best. And then in a card appearing now about why I absolutely hate Disney's other take on the Peter Pan story. Until then, thank you very much for consuming this video, and until next time. Always take place in theaters, and the songs would just be numbers. Fuck. What a long sentence. Why do I write this stuff? Ow! Provincial town, and how... I wish I'd say the words that are on my script instead of making them up as I go. Why did I write a script to begin with? She loves him, and is also frustrated by Peter always speaking for him. Pronouns should not be this hard, especially when it's written right in front of me. Even though I feel like he got little to do in the second half of the film, I feel Jim Jim. What the fuck is that? He had great community, and for not agreeing with Wendy when she wants him to just end the seemingly endless fighting. That's not the words I wrote.